everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports, and we're looking at week 2 of the NFL season here with an NFL pick'em and predictions video. Again, this is going to be a series that is continuing throughout the year. Typically, I have my co-creator Austin here with me. He will not be in today's video, but I still do have his picks. They actually mirror my picks exactly this week, and last week was a tough one for me. Started the year 6-9-1, but Austin started off the year 10-5-1. The reason my record's looking so bad, I had the Falcons in that one, who blew a 16-point lead down the stretch of the game. I had the Panthers, who lost on a game-winning field goal. Already there, you have those two wins for me. I moved to 8-7-1. I had the Jaguars lose in the last minute of their game as well, and what was a pretty good matchup in week 1. So had a few things gone differently. My record could have been flipped here, 9-6-1 potentially, but I find myself behind the 8-ball a little bit. Austin, of course, had a very good week 1 because we picked opposite in a bunch of different games, and he narrowly edged me out in a few games consecutively, especially in that noontime slot. So it's definitely a good week for Austin and pick'em. And now let's get into what's going to be a really good week for the NFL season. Thursday Night Football, we've got a really great matchup between two AFC West teams, the Los Angeles Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs, as the Chargers head into Arrowhead. Again, Austin's pick here going to mirror my pick, so I don't necessarily have all of his selections, but I do know what he typically would vote for. Him and I are best friends, so I have a pretty good idea of what he thinks and feels about the NFL schedule. And here I'm going with the Chiefs simply because I think that this team is still slightly better than the Chargers. I know the Chargers got the flashy new upgrades. Khalil Mack had a huge game in week 1. But the Chiefs showed why I still have a lot of trust in this team. Patrick Mahomes had a phenomenal game in his first game without Tyreek Hill, and the Chiefs offense was awesome against a pretty good Arizona Cardinals team. Now, do I think the Chargers are better than the Cardinals? Yes, but the Chiefs are also at home in this one. Arrowhead's a very tough place to go in and play, especially for a divisional matchup. That stadium is going to be rocking, and I ultimately think the Kansas City Chiefs pull this one out because they're going to be motivated to win in a divisional game. I think that there's going to be a lot of ball movement from both of these teams pushing the ball down the field. And ultimately, even though the Chiefs don't have Trent McDuffie this week, we still don't know exactly the status on J.C. Jackson. And I think the Chiefs are poised to win this game. Travis Kelce is going to be huge in the passing offense. Then we get into the Sunday slate where we have, again, another good collection of games. 15 more to go, and we're looking at the New England Patriots heading into Pittsburgh. And this is one where I wasn't exactly sure what Austin would go for, but for me, I think the Steelers are the favorite here. And the reason why I like Pittsburgh so much more than New England is, one, we're at Heinz Field. The Pittsburgh Steelers just came off of a nice win against the Cincinnati Bengals where they forced 5 turnovers in that one. Yes, they lost TJ Watt. He will not be playing this game. But the Patriots did not look good against Miami. Mac Jones struggled as well. And I think Minkah Fitzpatrick, who played a really pivotal role in the matchup against the Cincinnati Bengals, both with a pick 6 and a block PAT, I think we could see him make some plays this week as well against Mac Jones. Quite frankly, the Steelers roster is better than New England's. If it weren't for Bill Belichick, I think New England would be a really bad team. But New England, of course, they get the most out of their players with the coaching staff there. They have experience. They win a lot of games. But I think this year is the year that Pittsburgh is going to be able to take advantage of being at home in this matchup. I think that their weapons are a little bit better. We'll see what the status is on Najee Harris. They got beat up a little bit in week 1 in terms of the injury report, but they still have Deontay Johnson. Trubisky looked pretty solid as well against Cincinnati. He really limited those turnovers, which I think is huge for him. And Pittsburgh here gets the win and moves to 2-0 in my opinion. Moving on to the Carolina Panthers at the New York Giants. And this is a great opportunity for the Giants themselves to move to 2-0. Brian Daboll got a huge win over Tennessee in week 1. And I think that could be a turning point for this Giants team. They need to win some games. And I think Brian Daboll showed that he might be the right guy for the job after a surprise win over Tennessee. I think a lot of people would have preferred Tennessee going into that matchup. Now you have a worse Carolina team coming into MetLife Stadium here. The Giants are at home again in this matchup, and I think that they probably pull this out. I picked the Panthers over Cleveland last week. They almost got the job done, but that was against a backup QB in Jacoby Brissett, and they still didn't win that game. I'm not the biggest believer in Daniel Jones, but is he right around the level of Jacoby Brissett? Yes, and I think the Giants probably get the win here. One of the big things I'm watching for in this one, what will Kadarius Toney do? Will he be on the field a bunch? Or will he basically get a DNP from his coach again? That's going to be a big thing to watch for in my estimation. Moving into our next matchup, we've got the New York Jets heading into Cleveland to face the Browns. And I think the Browns are just the really safe pick here. You've got the Jets on the road, who are a really young team. And even though Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed played very well in week 1 against the Ravens, the rest of the team did not. As long as Joe Flacco is starting QB, it's going to be hard for the Jets to win a lot of games. Now, when Zach Wilson comes back, that could be a different story, but the Browns are just simply better than the Jets on paper, and having home field advantage in this one. I think they're a very safe and easy bet, and something that I would count on happening in week 2 here. Browns move to 2-0, Jets move to 0-2, and it looks like another tumultuous season for the New York Jets, although there are definitely going to be more positives this year than most. Indianapolis Colts at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, I'm not exactly sure what Austin would pick here. He infamously picks against the Jaguars, and I'm going to pick the Jaguars here. We already know that the Colts struggle going into Jacksonville. They haven't won their last 5 games in Jacksonville, despite probably having superior rosters. And I don't know, maybe 4 of those 5 games, the only team that probably was better than their roster was the 2017 Saxonville team. And quite frankly, Jacksonville looked pretty good in week 1 as well. Obviously, they did not get the win, but Trayvon Walker, wow, what a debut. An interception, a sack. He played phenomenally. And you can't really say the same about the Colts. They got their rhythm late in that one, but they struggled against the Houston Texans, a team that I think we can all agree they should have beat. And the fact that they only tied in that one gives me a little bit more motivation here to pick Jacksonville. I think that they have an advantage here at home. And I think that in week 2 of Doug Peterson's tenure, there's going to be some more things tightened up. And I think they're going to look even better this next week than they did in week 1. I've got Jacksonville winning this one at home. The Miami Dolphins at the Baltimore Ravens. This is a really tough game to pick. Baltimore showed how good of a team they are, especially with their 28-3 thrashing of the New York Jets in week 1. But the Dolphins really had an exclamation point win over the New England Patriots as well. They started that game out 17-0, and really just were on cruise control from there. Tyreek Hill looked awesome in that Dolphins offense. Jalen Waddle had a big touchdown as well. They've got 2 dynamic playmakers, and it's going to be really tough for Baltimore to deal with this, especially with the loss of Kyle Fuller for the season. So the Dolphins for me are my preferred selection here, just slightly. I think this is going to be a very competitive game. I have the Dolphins winning by 3 points on the road. Had this game been in Miami, I'd be even more confident picking them at Hard Rock Stadium. But instead, I have the Dolphins just narrowly here going into Landover, Maryland. It's going to be a tough game taking on the Baltimore Ravens, but I think that there's a good chance here that they still pull this one out. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New Orleans Saints, another really good matchup. Saints pull out a win, obviously move to 1-0, and the Buccaneers destroyed the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday night primetime and really made themselves known that, hey, we're back. We've got Tom Brady. We've got the cast together. We're going to be just fine, and they were. Julio Jones looked great in that game. Mike Evans, of course, back to the end zone. He did what he does. And we'll see, obviously, Godwin suffered another injury, so we'll see what we get from him moving forward. But this Buccaneers team is really good. And even though it's a divisional game, they're heading on the road. I still think that their roster is just superior to what New Orleans has. Now, I think one of the big matchups to watch here is the receiver play. Will Michael Thomas outperform Mike Evans? Because if he does, there's a good chance that the Saints could walk away with this one. But I just have a little bit of a bias and preference here to the Buccaneers, simply because we've seen it the last 2 years. This team's been better. They've been more consistent than New Orleans. Tom Brady's better than Jameis Winston. Doesn't surprise anybody when I say that. And betting on the QB is a safe thing to do in the modern NFL. The team with the best QB often wins, or the team that has the QB that plays the best that day often wins. And I think it's a safer bet to say that Tom Brady will outperform Jameis Winston this week, even though Tom's on the road and Jameis is at home with some of the most boisterous fans in the NFL. Washington Commanders go into Detroit and take on the Lions. And I really like the Lions in this game. Lions were very competitive in week 1, despite giving up 38 points to Philadelphia. That offense moved the football, and all around that team looked pretty darn good. I think that the Lions, they're a team that, Dan Campbell's got these guys moving in the direction that they need to go in. This team has really improved from where I thought they were going to be 2 years ago, just simply given the fact that, hey, this team, that roster didn't have a lot of talent. Jared Goff at QB was questionable, but ultimately they play games and they play hard. And I think the Lions at home get the win over the Washington Commanders and move to 1-1. Last year, they played in a lot of close games and lost. Another indication of that here in week 1. But the fact that it was a close game with a very talented Eagles team gives me really positive signs about what the Lions season is going to look like this year. And I think it's very possible they move to 1-1 and take down Washington, who they had a good week as well. I'm excited to see Jahan Dotson in week 2. I really like that selection for them when they made it. I think the Commanders have a really nice young core of playmakers. I'm just not sure if I can bet on Carson Wentz in back-to-back weeks. The Seattle Seahawks head into San Francisco, and we're not going to have the second coming here of a surprise Seahawks team. The 49ers are better. Yes, they dropped the ball against the Chicago Bears, but ultimately, they're going to get this win. They need it. If they lose, they put themselves in a really tough spot in the division at 0-2. I think they're going to be very well prepared for the Seahawks team. Jamal Adams has sustained an injury as well, so the Seahawks are without one of their best defensive players. And the 49ers are hungry. Coming off of a bad loss to Chicago, Shanahan's going to find ways to get Deebo Samuel the ball. He's also going to find ways to make Trey Lance successful. Remember that first game of the season, they were in a sloshy, wet Soldier Field. Now they're going to be at home back in Santa Clara, and they're not going to have any issues throwing the football. Obviously, ball security was going to be a concern there with the weather and the type of terrain they were playing on. So San Francisco, I think, was at a disadvantage playing against Chicago that way, whereas now they're at home, and they're going to have a good advantage against the Seahawks just with that home field to begin with, and the weather. I think that's going to help them. Who knows, though? Maybe Geno Smith pops off for a second crazy week, and then maybe we'll have an MVP poll that he's sitting near the top of. The Falcons head into Los Angeles and take on the Rams this week at SoFi Stadium. And I like the Falcons team. I think Arthur Smith's a heck of a coach, but this team needs to figure out how to close games. I would be sick if I was a Falcons fan. The amount of leads that this team has blown since the 28-3 debacle in the Super Bowl has been ridiculous. I mean, flat out ridiculous. That team should have won the game against New Orleans. They outplayed them for 3/4 of that game. But they found themselves with a loss because they just couldn't close the door when they needed to. And if you can't close the door against New Orleans, good luck closing it against the Rams. They're a much better team. I know they didn't look good in week 1, but they've had extra time to prepare for this. Remember, they were the opening game on Thursday Night Football this year. So they've had actually about 9 days to prepare for this by the time that their game is, by the time it's game time. And I think the Rams are going to take advantage of that. McVay, they're going to be hungry to get a win. Don't be surprised if Matthew Stafford looks Allen Robinson's way quite a bit, actually, early in that game, just to prove that, hey, yeah, I trust Allen Robinson. He's out here for a reason. And I also think we're going to see a lot of Darrell Henderson for the Rams. Cam Akers looked terrible in pass protection, and I think it's really solidified the RB1 spot. So if you have Cam Akers, I would advise do not start him in fantasy this week and see if you can get your hands on Darrell Henderson instead. The Arizona Cardinals head into Vegas to take on the Raiders, two teams at 0-1 that are better than 0-1 records. These are two very good teams, but I think the Raiders here at Allegiant Stadium at home, they have the advantage here for me. I know it's not a far trek from Arizona over to Vegas, but I think the Raiders, they're going to have a louder crowd. They're going to be really hungry to get the win, and I don't know who on Arizona can match up one-on-one with Devontae Adams. He had a great week 1. And now I think if Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow can get involved here in week 2, this Raiders team is going to be very, very dangerous. They lost that game by 1 score to the Los Angeles Chargers, and Derek Carr played awfully. that was probably one of the worst games we're going to see from Derek Carr this season. Expect him to be better. And I think against Arizona, he's going to showcase what this offense can really look like. And I think Devontae Adams probably going to get a house call as well this week. Expect him in the end zone. And I think that even Darren Waller or Hunter Renfrow, one of those two will catch a touchdown as well this week. And they're just going to win this game, I think, by 7 to 10 points. Houston Texans head into Denver to take on the Broncos. And these are two surprise teams. Texans at 0-1, tied with the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think anyone was expecting that. And I know nobody was expecting the Seahawks to beat their former QB in Russell Wilson. Of course, the Broncos are at a really tough spot after losing in week 1 to a team that I think everyone feels they should have beat. Geno Smith outperformed Russell Wilson, but Davis Mills is not going to outperform Russell Wilson. It's not going to happen 2 weeks in a row. Russell Wilson is too gifted, too talented, and he's got some good receivers there. It was nice to see Jerry Jeudy break out last week. I think Cortland Sutton gets involved this week as well. And the Texans, Stingley looked pretty good in his debut. Broke up a touchdown in the back of the end zone. And I think he's the right corner for the job. The only issue is Denver's just better. They have two really good receiving threats on the outside in Jeudy and Sutton. They've also got inside receivers as well that can make stuff go. And I think ultimately the Broncos probably get the win here against Houston. Then we have the Cincinnati Bengals going into Dallas to take on the Cowboys. This would have been a really good matchup had Dak Prescott been healthy, but he's not. So it gives me a pretty clear indication that Cincinnati's going to win this game. Joe Burrow was really sloppy in week 1 against Pittsburgh. Now it's a very talented defense to be going up against, a lot of pressure, a lot of talented playmakers on the back end, but nonetheless, he looked sloppy. Jamar Chase turned up. And that's the thing, as that game went on, Burrow started playing better and better. Week 2 is going to be what we call a get-right game for Joe Burrow. He's going to have a nice game against Dallas. I think that, as long as he doesn't throw carelessly toward Trayvon Diggs, Cincinnati's going to have a really good chance at winning this football game, and I think they're going to go in there, get the job done. Dallas is going to move to 0-2. That's going to be a really tough place for them to be, but Cincinnati, they need this win, move back to 1-1 after what was a crazy loss to the Pittsburgh Steelers with all those missed field goals. Sunday night primetime, we have the Chicago Bears going into Green Bay to take on the Packers. Not exactly sure why the Bears get primetime games like they do, especially with where I live. I have to watch the Bears every single weekend, but it's okay. The Packers take care of the Bears this week. I know the Bears, nice win week 1. You're not going into Lambeau and beating Aaron Rodgers after he started 0-1. Aaron Rodgers is going to take advantage of this Bears defense. Now, he did struggle against Minnesota's 3-4, so it'll be interesting to watch him go to work against Eberflus's defense, because I think that's maybe where the Bears would have an advantage in this one is, newer defense. Rodgers hasn't really seen them yet. Does that give them an advantage? Yes, but I think the Packers are just more talented. I expect A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones to both have pretty good weeks this week against the Bears and to move the football pretty well through the air in the passing game using those running backs. And then we get into our 2 Monday Night Football games. One of them here, the Tennessee Titans go into Buffalo to take on the Bills. And this is going to be a safe pick all year. You're going to want to pick the Bills in your pick'em leagues. Just bet on them to win. They're very good. I think they showcased that against the Los Angeles Rams. I thought that game was going to be more competitive than it was. But the Bills really are that talented. They showed why they are a lot of people's Super Bowl favorite. They dominated that matchup. Stephon Diggs, one of the best route runners in the league. Gabe Davis, a really good number 2 option. You have a bevy of running backs there as well. I hope James Cook gets a few more touches this week. Obviously, he coughed up his first career NFL touch. I don't think that's going to be a problem for him. He's a very talented player. I think he's going to have a pretty nice week, too, if he's given the opportunity. We'll see if Sean McDermott trusts him there or not at this point, but I really hope we see him on the field. I think he's talented. I think he elevates the ceiling of this Bills team. Dawson Knox, a really nice tight end. Tennessee, I just don't think matches up very well with Buffalo, especially on the outside when you consider the wide receiver play. And then also Josh Allen's that dude. One of the best draft picks in recent memory. The fact that they drafted him, I think, as the 4th receiver or 4th quarterback, maybe it was 3rd. I think it might have been 3rd after Mayfield and Darnold. But nonetheless, the fact that he wasn't the first QB to go, and they've gotten out of him what they have, it shows really good talent evaluation, shows really good development. And I think that the Bills are reaping all the benefits now and are going to win here in week 2. And our final matchup of the week. And boys, this is a good one. This might be two of the best teams in the NFC. The Minnesota Vikings, who manhandled the Green Bay Packers. Zadarius Smith, well worth the money that Minnesota gave him. And then you also look at the situation with Justin Jefferson. 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, just played so great in the first half even of the game against Green Bay. And then the second half, added on a little bit more for the extra touch. But the Eagles, 38 points. Now that defense did give up a ton, but I think the key thing here for them, Jordan Davis, how much of an impact can he make against Minnesota, especially in the run game? If he can limit Dalvin Cook, Alexander Mattison, make it a lot more 3rd and 10s, and really dial in on Justin Jefferson, make Kirk Cousins go to his 2nd, 3rd reads. Kirk Cousins is a very talented quarterback. He can do that, but you don't want Justin Jefferson beating you. You're going to force Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne to make some plays. Both of those two are good receivers, by the way. It's not like they're bad. This is why this is such a good matchup. Vikings are extremely talented. The Eagles match up pretty well with a game wrecker in the middle with Jordan Davis. They have Gardner Johnson as well, who they traded for. I really like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson there. I think he gives them a good slot corner option against Justin Jefferson, where we're going to see him lined up quite a bit. I want to see if we see any wide back for Jefferson, where he lines up out of the backfield and provides a different type of matchup nightmare for this Eagles team. But I have the Eagles winning simply because it's in Philadelphia. Had this game been in Minnesota, I would have picked the Vikings. Probably a very close game, and reminds me really of the 2017 run by Minnesota, where they got really deep into the postseason, ultimately lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in Philly that year, as the Eagles with Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. Thank you all so much for watching. Hopefully you did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Also subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one. This has been Utility Sports Pick'em. Thanks again, guys, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.